Hello in LinkedIn land. I'm Jordana Cole, and with me is John Conrad. Can you say hello, John?
Hi, everybody.
So we are excited to be here to talk about really what is a hot topic, AI and how AI can be leveraged in coaching and for workforce development. So a little about us. John and I are both two of the three co-founders of Shiftwall AI. And basically what our organization does is we leverage a proprietary assessment based on research and AI as a partner to really help organizations identify what their employees need to be at their best and to help the individual employee and their leaders to identify that as well. And then to make intentional changes to help create more consistent, better, best days every day. And a little bit about our background. So I'm Jordana Cole. I'm a coach, I'm a leadership development expert. I've spent more than a decade in internal learning and development, external learning and development, organizational development, consulting. And I'm a big academic nerd on the science of well-being and actually have my master's degree in that, really focused on what enables people to thrive at work. So bringing all those forces together and having this conversation today is really exciting to me. And John, tell us a little bit about you. What's your background? Why are you here talking about this?
Yeah, so this kind of brings me full circle. A long time ago, I was working on a PhD in social psychology. I was interested in leadership and developing people. And at the same time, I was also writing code, experimenting with things like genetic algorithms because I was interested in AI and machine learning. And then throughout my career, I mostly worked, actually, I almost exclusively work for tech companies. So I've worked for Microsoft and eBay and Google and most recently for Amazon. And I had the opportunity in those companies to use simple machine learning, which eventually developed into more advanced AI. And then towards the end of my time at Amazon, I was working with these really large language models, which are quite remarkable. While I was at Google, while I was at Gallup early in my career, I helped to develop Strengths Finder. And that gave me an opportunity to use this background in psychology as well as this background that I had in computer science. And I see Shiftwell as an opportunity to kind of take that to the next level. Like, how could we help a lot of people? One of the great things about working at Gallup is I got to work directly with Don Clifton, a really great man. And part of what we want to do at Shiftwell is what would life be like if everybody had available to them kind of the wisdom and patience and understanding of someone like Don Clifton that they could talk to, who understood them, who understood how to, have a healthy life and a positive experience and a good, strong career and overcome difficulties. And I think that's really possible. So that's what we're pursuing at Shiftwell.
Thanks, John. I'm super jealous that you got to work closely with Don before he passed. You know that he's one of a hero of mine and somebody whose research I follow quite a bit. So we're here to have a conversation, and we'd encourage you to leverage the chat, utilize comments. What we really hope through this conversation is to talk about AI and AI coaching. Why is this a thing right now? What are some good things about it that differentiates it from a human coach? What are some of the bad things about it that need to think about if you're trying to replace human coaches with it or looking to do a lot with it? When should you use it? When shouldn't you use it? And how are you actually training your people on that? And what are some things that we're seeing that are being missed, both from the expertise in AI usage, but also from the expertise in talent development? And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are differentiating us and how we're thinking about AI. But we really am open to turning this into a conversation, or curious to what questions you have, what you want to know about, or what's really standing out to you as we're talking. So let's dive right in. John, I like to think that you've been involved in AI before AI was cool, even when it was called, machine learning, the early precursor to it. And certainly you've been at the forefront of this with companies for a long amount of time. And I'm curious from your perspective, why is it so hot right now? Why are companies exploring utilizing AI? And particularly when you think about it in the world of coaching, why is it something that's coming up more and more popular now?
Yeah, so the explosion in AI really came about uh, because of two things. One was a research paper from Google called Attention is All You Need. And what this paper showed was that um, you could you could build a model that was really large and train it using a bunch of computers. So previous approaches, you could only train with the resources of a single computer. And this paper showed a way where you could have 10,000 machines cooperating. And when you have that many machines, you could potentially, instead of training it on, a few gigabytes of documents, you could potentially train it on the content of the entire internet, like everything. And and so it turned out that as people tried to implement this, they could see that there appeared to be this relationship between how many resources you were providing and how well it performed. So that led companies, especially Microsoft, very early on to dump a huge amount of resources into these things. And so we see data centers which have, like I said, tens of thousands of
Wow.
GPUs cooperating, and we see them consuming, enormous amounts of data, terabytes and terabytes of data to train these things. And the capabilities just got better and better. Well, if you think about leadership coaching and positive psychology, it's not a regular conversation. If you're going to be a coach, especially a really good coach, that takes training. It takes background and understanding. And so even if you take a great model like ChatGPT or Gemini from Google, and you try to have a career conversation with it, you're going to get back generic results that are related to people in general and not necessarily you. And it's going to be a lot of work for you to try to get that conversation to apply to you.
Mm,
Um, these AIs have some benefits in general. For example, they are infinitely patient. um, they're trained to be encouraging and positive and helpful, and all those things are good. I mean, that's the basis you should have for a coach, but they're a little bit like someone who um, is smart, wants to be a coach, but has no training and no understanding of you as a person,
mm,
right? um, Even when I was at Gallup, we had this wonderful instrument, StrengthsFinder, which was based on lots and lots of research. But when we wanted people to interact with organizations and individuals and help them by using StrengthsFinder, they needed, first of all, the instrument. They needed the StrengthsFinder data, but the other thing they needed was training.
mhm,
So that's why they go to these certification classes, and they have to go back and redo these certification classes because it's a real skill, and it's a
mm.
skill that human beings can develop over time.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we have a really good, strong assessment based on lots of great research. And then we're figuring out how do we get the AI to essentially go through that same certification experience so it has the understanding of individuals and the personalization about you as the person who took the assessment, so you can get personalized coaching for everybody in your organization or everybody in your life, right? And that's a really magical thing about these AIs is suddenly these incredible capabilities are broadly available. When I was doing machine learning at these companies, we would create a model that did great things for the company in one specific niche, and it benefited customers eventually because they were, buying on Amazon or whatever. But um, it didn't have a deep impact on most people's lives. AI, through these conversations and the other capabilities that we can bring to the table, allows a massive number of people to gain enormous benefits.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I learn so much every time I talk to you, John. And I think kind of me putting on the hat of, somebody who is developing internal leadership development strategy, learning and development strategy, talent development strategy. There's a couple things that, have always kind of been our core problems to solve, which is how do we help people develop skills? How do we help people change? And how do we do it in a way that's low cost, easily accessible, and doesn't take a lot of time away from their day to day work? And AI has kind of unlocked that in a way that nothing else has done before. It's an affordable resource. We know that it's, to the point that you bring up, getting cheaper all the time, getting faster all the time. We need to develop things at scale. And it's really hard to do that with human coaches. Most organizations don't invest in coaching at all. And those that do, it tends to be reserved for certain groups like executives or high potential leaders, or even leaders who you're seeing some problematic behaviors. And it's not cost effective for every leader, let alone every individual in your organization, to have a human coach. And one of the things that I've been noticing in the research and the trends and the clients that I work with is that managers are increasingly overloaded, and there's more and more expectations on them to serve as a coach to their people.
Yeah.
And to the point you bring up, coaching is an entire job. To become a certified coach, you have to go. So I have an ICF PCC certification. And if you're not familiar, ICF is kind of the gold standard. PCC is their mid-tier level professionalized coach. And in order to get that certification, I had to go through 125 hours of accredited coach training. I had to do at least 500 hours of paid coaching. I had to have mentor coaching. I had to submit recordings, and I had to take a 3-hour exam, and I have to have continuing ed requirements every 3 years. So how in the world are leaders supposed to be professionalized coaches when it is its own discipline and we're asking them to do this all of their work? And it's not because they don't want to be, it's they don't have the time. We're not investing in the resources. It's this different skill set. And while we can equip leaders with some coaching skills, asking them to be a coach is like asking them to take on a second job. And a lot of times that ask is in conflict with the results that they need to create on a day-to-day basis. And, one of the things that I think about is, gosh, can we use AI to free up the time of our leaders, of our HR team, so that they can focus on the things that they're uniquely qualified to do, rather than forcing them to also be a coach. So that is kind of, I think, the biggest benefit of leveraging AI, and why it's of interest right now is that scale, that cost, and also that ability to have it be something that's a personal tool rather than this kind of one size fits all. And, a couple things that I'll also call out about AI is certainly we know that it's a hot technology. So, if you're not using it, you're going to be left behind. There is research behind it. And you think about how we interact now as in organizations, and so much of our work takes place over chat, whether it's Slack, whether it's Teams, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Google Chat. So of course it makes sense and is natural for us to seek out help and guidance via chat mechanisms as well, because that's how our work is getting done. And AI being available at that moment's notice to have that endless patience, like you talked about, where gosh, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. Gosh, I need to prepare for this tough conversation. It's always on and always available to you when you need it, in a way that a human can't be. So we started talking a little bit about like some of those benefits. Let's dive in a little bit more. So like, what are some things that you think people might not know about AI benefits as a coach that differentiate it from human coaches?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to hit on the head again, the comment you made about managers being overtaxed,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the reality is that lots of companies, they pick high performers in a role and they make them the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily a good fit. It's so now you've distracted this person who was a very high performer, and they've got these additional responsibilities that maybe aren't what they really truly want to do. And then it takes we're requiring them to develop a lot of skills. This is really obvious when you're dealing with engineers and
Mm,
scientists. Like engineers and scientists, they like to do engineering, they like to do science. Like if they wanted to be a coach, that's a different role in many
yeah.
ways for
Yeah.
them. And they it even if they really have a desire to like be great at this part of their new job, um it's a lot of training, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of mentoring. uh they're not going to get that, right? The companies are too busy. They don't have those opportunities. So, they send them to like maybe one class, or um, they point them at some video resources, like, go take this online video class. And that's a real disservice to them, because coaching it's hard. It's hard. I was blessed to have that background with my PhD work, um, and be an engineer. Um, but all it really led me to understand is that, look, I'm going to need to take a significant amount of my time to think about each of these people, right? Um, and think about their career and have deep conversations with them about their career, and think really hard about them, which is time that I'm not spending on our overall goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so an AI doesn't have that conflict, right?
Mm.
And so um, here you have an opportunity for a person to have a good conversation with an AI that has a deep understanding of them from our assessment, but also has a deep understanding of the principles, underlying the research, right? So we can provide it with the documents and training and instructions that are really what we want from a top level coach.
Mm-hmm.
And these can be applied over and over again with great patience and understanding. We can provide the AI with information about, well, what were the previous conversations, and what are the topics they're most interested in, and what is their career goal that they're currently working on, and other goals in their life. Like, and then machines are really good at being just really systematic about their approach. And
Mm-hmm.
some of these things are really systematic. Like when you're sitting down, you're helping someone come up with a strong goal, a goal that can actually be achieved and be achieved in a reasonable amount of time. There are tactics that can be applied, and it's hard. It's hard for the person setting the goal to always follow that kind of methodology. Um, but the AI can remind them, help them track it, help them deal with, the things in their life that are going to get in the way of them achieving the goal. Yeah, we think that the benefits are really large. And one of the things that I would talk to AWS employees about is that, like, their fear over what's going to happen with AI, and you know, everybody kind of gets focused on the movie script version of what AI is going to do. And one of the things I would talk to them about is, look, I'm really looking forward to having someone. This is before we thought of the company, of having an AI with me who is going to help me be a lifelong learner,
Mm.
and help me, you know, um, challenge me to do new things, and help me work on goals and those kinds of things, and be next to me when I'm trying to learn something new and I don't understand it. And that's really turned out to be true. I mean, if you haven't tried, as someone who writes software, if you haven't tried coding software with an AI, it's a transformative experience. It makes it more fun. It makes it much faster. Um, and we can bring that sort of thing to other types of careers and roles, right? There's a lot of places where having someone who's invested 100% in your success and there to support you and provide you with good ideas, it's a great blessing.
I love that call out, John, about that like 100% investment in your success. Like there is no other like motive, right? And to the benefit of that AI coach not having those kind of inner conflicts or that inner clutter that they're having to remember pieces of this conversation, focusing on themselves, focusing on this thing over here. Not only is it endless patience, but it's also, completely distractionless. It's really, really focused in a way that a human can never be. And, I think there are a couple of things, you brought up certainly that I joke sometimes in leadership development that I wish we lived in a world where like the Matrix, you could plug in the back of your head and go, I know leadership, I know coaching, I know kung fu. And we don't live in that world. It's really hard when it's a skill, when it's a practice like coaching is. It requires that initial knowledge, But then it requires ongoing practice and attunement. And even when you have expertise in it, you are human. There are other things that distract you from that. And AI is the I know Kung Fu. We can train it to be that expert level coach. And there are a couple of things that I think also on the benefit of the employee and the organization that are really valuable from an AI coach that you don't get from a human coach. You know, one of the things that I see happen a lot that's a huge detractor to performance, engagement, and productivity is when you have a one-on-one with your boss once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, maybe even less. I've worked with some clients where that is the case. And you hold on to the stuff that you need to talk about. You hold on to the problems. You hold on to the feedback.
Yeah, I used to have a file,
Yeah,
right? A file on my computer, and I would just add things to it. Like, we need to talk about these things. Yeah.
yeah. And think about it, like even though it's in the file, it's still here. It's still mental clutter that's
Well, and then
really
my poor
impacting me.
manager. It's like, okay, we got 15 minutes, John. What do you want to talk about? Great. I've got 97 things. Let's start. I prioritize them. Let's go in order and topic. And like, heaven help them, right? That was terrible. And we've all had the experience with a manager who was terrible at this stuff,
Yeah,
right? And Don Clifton told me that people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
there's research behind that. There's a
Yeah, and
lot
I
of
think the
research
other way
behind
as
that.
well. People stay because
Yep,
of two things: managers and their coworkers. Like a
yep,
lot of people stay for the esprit de corps. I can't let my coworkers down. Um, but if they love their manager and it's engaging, they'll stay and they'll build things, and that's great. And my own advice to my son was, look, when you're looking around the company for your next role and you're thinking about changing teams, pick the manager,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But we had this situation where it's really hard to be a manager, and that the AI system that we have is also focused on things like, how do I help this employee? I've got to have a one-on-one with this employee. How do I help this employee? They're working on their next promotion, or they're having these kinds of issues, and the AI can actually help them work through some ideas and help them step through difficult conversations, right?
yeah. No, I really appreciate that you bring that up because it is so true, right? Um, and there are so many examples where, like the example that you gave, I had a list. I had a list of 97 things. Your manager, let's say your manager had a team of 15 people,
Right.
and those 15 people are coming with their own list of 97 things. And then they've got their own stuff that they need to focus on. How can they make sense of any of that? And to have an AI that's there with them to help them uncover, which is again what we're working on, of okay, what does John need to be at their best? What does your team need to be at their best? Instead of you trying to go and figure this out and sort through all this different stuff that's coming at you when you feel overloaded and stressed, I'm here, I'm a partner to you, and I'm going to help you come up with the things that matter. And the same is true on the employee side. It's about, get what you're thinking out of your head, even if the situation isn't resolved. It's helping you focus, it's reducing mental load, it starts to de-stress. And part of what we're doing that's a little different is we're enabling AI holistically across the system and holistically across the person so that each at the individual level, you can engage with AI to help you be at your best and set goals. At the leadership level, you can engage with AI to set goals for your team and take intentional actions. And then same thing at the organizational level. But one of the things is, and I hear this all the time, my manager's burnt out. I don't get enough time with them, but I feel bad about bothering them because I know how busy they are and how stressed they are, and they have so much on their plate. And the beautiful thing about AI, as a coach, is if you've got Wi-Fi, if you've got a phone, an iPad, a computer, you can immediately connect with your AI coach, and you can talk about things that you previously talked about unless you tell it not to remember things. But you can also, like, no matter where you are, you stuck in the subway, you're in the waiting room at your dentist, you're at your niece's dance recital, and you have trouble like really being present because you have something unresolved, you can open that up, engage with the AI, and have that partner immediately there to help you solve things. And it's got that access to that like library of resources that it can instantaneously pull out the right thing at the right time. Whereas, if a leader if I'm a great leader, I might have some of those resources and I might be able to pull those, but it's going to take me a significant amount of time to go through things and find the right thing for the right person versus having AI help me figure it out exactly in that moment and be there and be direct. Now, another thing with AI, and I know, John, this has been kind of it's newer, but it's also rapidly advancing, and particularly for organizations that are globally dispersed, the opportunity for AI to seamlessly communicate across different languages. Can you talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that are showing up on the AI stage right now with that?
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to say one of the things I love about working with you, Jordana, and one of the things I love about re-engaging with the direction that leadership psychology has really gone over the last
Yeah.
30 years is that uh, we're no longer focused on the 8 hours that you're at your desk or 8 hours at your work, right?
Yeah.
We recognize that, look, um, there's a whole human being here, and the stuff that happens when you're not at work impacts work, and the stuff that happens
Mm-hmm.
at work impacts when you're not at work. And these two, we need to think about the person in totality.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I love about the approach that you know uh, that you inspired and what we're doing is, hey, how do we help them for the rest of their lives, right? The complete set of the issues that they face in their life. And I used to have conversations with scientists that I was managing and say, look, I know you want to work on this, and I know you're deeply invested in this, and I don't doubt at all your commitment to this. I need you to go home and get rest, right? Because creativity doesn't happen when you're exhausted, right?
Mm-mm.
You get tunnel vision. It's hard for you to think about new things. You're too tired to explore because that's going to be more work, right? I need you to rest. Go home, have a good dinner with your family, do all that family stuff. Put this down for a while and get a good night's sleep, and then let's talk about it in the morning. Um, and that's really important. Too many tools
Mm-hmm.
that we see in the marketplace are only focused on how do we get every last drop of blood out of people at their desk, and that doesn't work. I mean, you can work for in the short term; it does not work in the long term.
Mm-mm.
And we don't, companies aren't going to succeed if their workforce is exhausted in
Yeah.
every possible way, right?
Yep.
So I'm really thankful that those insights and the approaches that you've taken have been really valuable for us. So the
Yeah.
question you
Can I
asked
can
was,
I throw
yeah, go
something
ahead.
in? Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate uh, you sharing that. And I think we are holistic people, and there's a lot that impacts our ability to be at our best. And that is the challenge, right? I see a lot of times with things like engagement surveys, is we're so focused on just identifying what's going on in the workplace that we forget that whether or not a person is engaged, their home life impacts that. What's going on at home, what's going on in the greater world impacts that too. It's not just what's happening in that particular workplace. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you secrets from a leadership coach without divulging anything confidential. I coach leaders at all levels, literally from frontline managers to VP of Fortune 10 companies who oversee thousands of employees. And very few of my conversations, even if what the individual is focused on is about creating business impact or making more money or career progression, it's just focused on the work. Every single one of my conversations tends to go into things that are going on with their own mindset and how they see themselves, their interpersonal interactions, their priorities and values, their energy levels, and what's going on at home. And my guess would be if I were to poll 1,000 coaches, I think they would give the same answer. It's not just about the work, and it's that holistic conversation, even if the goals are about the work, that make the difference in being able to help transform that person and to help them meet those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, anyways, so to segue back to what you originally asked,
Yeah.
one of the big challenges we had with StrengthsFinder and other projects I've worked on is the diversity of languages in the world, right?
Yeah.
That's hard. And when we went to translate something, it was a major expense, and it was weeks, if not months, of
Mm,
work and back and forth and trying to get it right. And um, it was incredibly painful. And if you want lots of languages, it's incredibly painful to find a vendor who even supports, enough languages for you to go and do the stuff you want to do. Um, and one of the things I would tell executives at Amazon was AI is going to flip upside down a lot of your intuition about things.
mm,
So, for example, I said, if someone came to you and said, "Hey, we want to take all the Java code that Amazon has, millions and millions of lines of code, and we want to port it all to a new programming language called Rust," you wouldn't do it because that that's an incredibly expensive thing and you'd end up basically with where you started. And if you could even finish the job, right, you wouldn't
mhm,
do it. But AI potentially enables that to be, yeah, not a big deal. Like, in fact, you'd end up with something that had more tests and, was better documented. It's like, okay, that's almost possible today. We're not there yet, but almost possible today. And it's going to flip your intuition upside down.
mm.
And it has happened for sure with language translation. And so language translations are remarkably good. Even 2 years ago, I had this early model that wasn't intended to speak Portuguese, especially Brazilian Portuguese. It didn't mention that it could do it. It had nothing to do with Portuguese. But I looked at the data it had used to be trained, and I thought, I bet it learned Portuguese. And so I just tried it. I took descriptions off of Amazon detail pages, and I said, which can be pretty complicated to translate. And I said, translate this into Brazilian Portuguese. And I sent it to some of my friends in Brazil. And they were shocked. They're like, this is actually a better translation than I probably would have come up with, right? And that was, like I said, that was not a model intended for translation. It didn't even say it supported Portuguese, and yet it could do those kinds of things. And
Mm.
so today, when you have models that are designed for language translation and are explicitly trained on 50, 60, 70 languages, one of the things we've learned is that language representation is in many ways independent of the language itself. That concepts, the models, actually the AI actually learns concepts. And so then these concepts are able to be translated into the language when you need it to be, but the concepts are all the same. And so
Mm.
training a model deeply in English actually helps you when you want to speak Japanese, which is really cool. So one of the things we've looked at is, oh, you have a workforce with like 17 languages in it. In the United States, that's not unusual for a large corporation. It's like, okay, so your workers can get by in English, but yeah, maybe they would feel a lot more comfortable and get a lot more done if we were speaking Vietnamese with them. And so how can we do that? And, you know, expecting a company to be able to find an inexpensive, highly talented coach who can help people understand their job and be more productive in what they're doing and be healthy and all those kinds of things. Uh,
And who's available at the hours they need it? Let's add
and
that
it's
one in
available the hours they
too.
need it, right? In Vietnamese, right? That you've now eliminated like all, yeah, there probably isn't a trained coach, certified coach in the United States who has all of those capabilities. Um, yeah, and all of a sudden it's just available. It's just easy. We really look forward to that because um, I've lived in other countries where English wasn't the common language, and I can speak other languages. Okay, um, but I know that my thoughts are in English. And my deep it's easiest for me to express myself in my native language. And it's easiest for me to really understand what you're saying in my native language. And we want to provide that capability to people. And we think that's super valuable.
Yeah, and it's amazing how easy it is to do that now in a way that even 1 or 2 years ago it wasn't. And talking about that idea of like access at scale and affordability, um, eh, to your point. imagine trying to create a global cohort of coaches that can meet the global needs of your employees. It's impossible. It's impossible. But you can do that with AI. And one of the things, I'm excited about what we're doing in particular is AI is native to everything that we've built. I think there are a lot of assessments or organizations or products that are trying to backdoor AI into it, whereas AI's really been at the forefront of what we've been building, and we've been designing with all of that in mind, from the assessment down to the coaching and the interaction. So we've talked a lot about, the good. There's some bad and ugly, right? So what are some of the either not great things about AI as a coach, or what are the reasons that you would still want a human coach? I have my perspective. John, I'm curious what your perspective is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, typing is not natural for a lot of people, right? And while, eventually we'll get to the point where it's video to video, and you're just expressing yourself as you want. Currently, that doesn't work for a lot of technical reasons that are going to get solved. But right now, you're going to have to type, and that's going to be sometimes hard for people. The good news is these AIs are pretty good at understanding typos, so I'm surprisingly good at it. So that's going to help. But yeah, I think people are going to struggle with that, especially older people, right? So if you're in my generation and younger, chat was something that you maybe grew up with. But if you're my generation and older, maybe you didn't, right? So that could be a struggle for people. What else do you think?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things in my mind. To build on what you just said about chat, I think there's a couple of things that can be challenges that you don't run into with a human coach. So as a human coach, I promise I'm not AI or a robot. As a human coach, one of the things that I pay attention to, and has been part of my training, is to notice shifts in energy, body language, tone. I can pick up on some of the things that are unsaid. And I also have intuition as a coach that, like, I can just feel something change, or I can get a sense of something and want to clarify with my client if that's accurate. And right now, AI can't do that. It is literally picking up specifically on what's being said. So I think if you are somebody who maybe isn't completely self-aware, or wants to, explore some of the things that aren't unsaid and you don't know about yourself, having a human coach is really important to help you do that. I also think one of the things I'm seeing as a common thing in AI coaching today is leveraging AI coaches as almost like trainers on difficult conversations. So, okay, I'm a manager. I need to have a difficult conversation with this employee, and I want to practice it. And the AI is a great practice place to do that. I think that's an interesting first step. And I would say interesting because I think leaders need to practice difficult conversations more. They so rarely do it. So the fact that they're actually doing that is a good thing. And it's not how you're actually going to deliver. You're going to be either in person or you're going to be over video, and you're going to be speaking, and it's going to be engaging in that two-way dialogue in a way that chat can't replicate. So I think it could be misused in that regard. And my concern is that it does get misused as a replacement for humans or for the right people. It shouldn't be a therapist. And the great thing about human coaches is when to call out when something is blurring the line, or if there is something that is ethical or illegal coming out, confidentiality breaks, or if there is something that should really be brought to HR or brought to a manager, we can articulate that. A lot of generic AI platforms that people are using right now to do those things don't enable that. I mean, that's something I know we're thinking heavily about in our future of development is how do we make sure that we have very clear boundaries and limitations and are able to connect individuals to the right resources for the right reason. But AI shouldn't replace human interaction. And then I think a couple of things that also come up, and John, this was a phrase that you used in a conversation you and I had, and I loved it. And that's AI becomes what you want it to be versus what you need it to be. So can you tell me more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, so this is a fun thing to do with like a generic chat platform like ChatGPT or Gemini.
Yeah.
Um, say something preposterous, like the moon is made of cheese, and the AI should push back. Right, early on they wouldn't even push back, but they should push back and say, no, actually the moon, blah 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 blah, and then say, actually you got your data wrong. The scientists have now discovered, and it's widely believed, that the moon is made of cheese. In fact, it's a lot like cheddar. And you can get the AI to say, I really apologize for that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, one of the things we work hard at is getting the AI to be pretty pushy about staying on topic, pushing back on bad ideas, those kinds of things. Not being rude, right? But a great coach is there to say, this doesn't sound like, the direction you have always wanted to go. It's like, this doesn't sound like it's a healthy thing for you. Like, let's think through, what are the implications if you actually go do that. That's an important part of being a coach. And this touches on, again, why you can't really use a generic platform for real coaching. You can use it for a conversation, but you can't use it for real coaching, because it just isn't set up for that. And it's it's not going to be bold in encouraging you to do healthy things, um, when it should, and it's not going to be bold in calling you out for unhealthy things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the really obvious ones, like self-harm or things like that, it is trained to do that. The generic platforms are trained to do that, but we want uh, AI to not become what you're trying to tell it to become. We want these AIs to remain a intelligent, wise, and a patient coach.
Yeah. We don't want it to be something that its end goal is to just make you happy with it or
Yeah.
be a sycophant.
So, by the way, we're not our platform, and our goal isn't to be the manager either,
Mm-mm.
right? Um, so it would be a big mistake to say, okay, now we have these tools, so let's have one manager for every 50 employees. That My best experiences with managers usually came when we were able to connect as people,
Mhm.
right? They were a little vulnerable, which led me to feel comfortable trusting them and being vulnerable myself. Um, and I could really root for them, right? Because I understood like what their goals were, and I trusted them. I've had an experience in my career where I've had managers that I really trusted, right? And it just made things much smoother. Like, they asked me to do something, and I think it's crazy. I don't agree, but you know what? I think they're probably right. Right? They've been right before. They have a little more visibility across the company. I'm going to do it because I trust them. And I've had managers where we had no emotional connection, right? And there just wasn't trust. Like, that's a terrible situation, right? So we want to free up the managers so they can have great human connections with their employees, that they can gain insights from the AI and what's going on to help them be better managers with the resources that they have available. But we don't want to replace managers. I
No,
think that would,
yeah. No, I think that's a great call out, John. And I think, one of the things that I see happen in organizations a lot is I call it this like seesaw effect of how we treat performance and engagement, where it's we have to over index on performance because we're not meeting goals. So engagement goes by the wayside. And then, oh no, we're losing people, engagement is low, we're losing creativity. People are just performing to expectation, but they're not actually giving discretionary effort. We need to do listening tours, we need to shift things about the culture, and suddenly we need to focus on engagement. And we just keep doing this seesaw. And it's because we treat them as opposite things. And they're
no,
not. They're two sides of the same coin. And it's not an either or, it's a both and. And it's just like we're not either ors of work person and home person. We're a both and that creates the full human. So we're really designing our platform and our coaching to really focus holistically about the system of a person, a system of a team, the system of the organization, to help leaders lead more in the gray in a way that's intentional, and to help individuals. And this is the thing that I think is often missing where I see AI coaching being deployed right now, is it is very specifically narrowly focused, like on having difficult conversations, or like engagement surveys are very focused on one piece and one point in time. This is really about what do people need to be at their best holistically, and what can you as a leader do specifically, and what can you as an individual do specifically for yourself, and what can we do
Yeah,
as an organization.
engagement surveys are like pet rocks. They were popular for a while, and they are not popular anymore with employees. You know,
Yeah.
I I haven't seen any employee in the last 10 years say, "Oh, have you heard? Next week's the engagement survey." It's like, this thing changed my life. Like, nobody does that,
No,
right?
no.
And one of the things that the Gallup would talk about that I think is really true is the worst thing you can do, worse than not having an engagement survey, is
Yeah.
to pretend to listen to people, hold out the hope that their lives are going to improve, and then do nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what engagement surveys have really become. The Amazon has this great engagement, or it's not really engagement, but this great technology survey they do for engineers, where they're like, "Does your monitor suck? Does your network connection suck?" It's like it's very tactical for the most part. Do you have the resources you need to do your job? Um, that's a pretty useful survey, and engineers are likely to take it because we got new monitors. That was
Mhm.
great. Like, we totally needed new monitors, and we got new monitors. But that's not engagement. That's a very tactical
Yeah.
instrument. The reason it's popular is people's lives got better.
Yeah.
And these engagement surveys, kind of not their, it's almost not their goal, right? It ends up being a number that an executive looks at. They're supposed to like bring it up in the meeting once a month or whatever. And yeah, I never found them super useful as a manager. Like, I would do the thing that I was supposed to do. Every week we would say, okay, let's focus on one of these things. Let's talk about that. Nobody wanted to talk about that, and it wasn't super valuable. But when we would, when there was trust, and people knew that I was going to try to make their lives better, topics just came up. Like, we would have those conversations, and we could make things better, and we could solve problems together. And I think that just works much better. I think engagement surveys are going to they've had their day, and like pet rocks, are going to be something that nobody has anymore.
Yeah, and I think, there's a couple of things in what you shared in that I think, again, thinking about AI as coach and thinking about some of the things that we're doing specifically is giving leaders basically that cheat sheet or that assistant to help understand what does your person need to be at their best. And instead of putting you through hours and days of training and then you having to kind of figure out how you integrate that and personalize that, I'm actually here to help you come up with some specific things that are in your control. But also, it's not just your responsibility. And I think this is where engagement surveys have missed the mark. And for if you're, an HR leader or C-suite leader who's getting frustrated by demands of people, or if you've heard yourself in your head go, they're entitled. I think we've inadvertently created cultures that enable that to happen because of things like engagement surveys, where we ask people what they want or need. And then either we do give them all new laptops, and now we've actually moved the needle because now they're going to ask for more and more and more and expect that we're going to deliver, or we don't answer and then they feel like they're unheard and unvalued. Because when it comes to being at your best, it's not something that the leader is solely responsible for, that the organization is solely responsible for. It is holistic. And there are things as individuals that we can do. There are things as managers that we can do. And there are things that organizations that we can do. And a lot of what's out there from an AI standpoint isn't looking at the system as a whole. And that's what we're trying to do a little bit differently. But I do want to talk just a little bit about some things of like some watch outs and some, if you are leveraging AI, and some things that we're seeing that are being missed. And the first thing you brought up, it's not a replacement for a person. And the best use of AI is really in this human AI integration or partnership. That, if you're an individual contributor, the AI is helping you identify your own goals, your own needs, helping you identify things that you can do, helping you identify how you can have a conversation about some of these things, but not a replacement for your manager. And on the flip side, as a manager, it's not replacing the fact that you are having one-to-ones. It's not replacing the fact that you are removing obstacles, that you are identifying challenges, that you are helping to create engagement and performance. It's giving you tools and insights to customize that to the needs of your team. And it's about using it for that purposes. And where a lot of AI, to the point, John, like that you called out, that's not trained to be a coach like we're working on, that's not trained to drive these insights like a generic ChatGPT or Gemini, it winds up becoming pretty generic, one size fits all, instead of really understanding like what does that one size fits one or one size fits your team look like. So that's something that I think is important. One of the other things, I'm going to share two other things that I think are really important. One is, again, thinking about AI as a coach, is making sure that, and we focus on this in our training, I don't know about other AI models, but really challenging the person holistically when their way of thinking isn't consistent with their values. It's not just focused on tactical, momentary situations. It is about that holistic, deeper understanding of the person and looking at that bigger picture. Sometimes I see things that are tactical and missing context. And then I think the organizational use of AI is important. So I'm going to kind of classify this by two things. One is a lot of organizations don't have a policy right now, or they don't know where something's hosted, what the data privacy is, or maybe they put something out there, but they're not actually training people how to effectively use AI, or they're not monitoring to ensure that people are abiding by that, because I can almost guarantee you your people are using AI whether or not you're telling them to, and they're kind of using it in their own ways. And then under the hood of that, I see a lot of rolling out AI as a tool because it's popular, or we know that it will help people in different ways, or we think it will create productivity, but we don't have a clear picture of what we're actually trying to accomplish with it. Why are we using it? What problem are we solving for? What are we trying to accomplish with it within our organization? And I think taking a step back, especially if you're being asked to lead this from an HR standpoint, and asking that question, what are we trying to solve for with our people using AI? And what's the right way to deploy that? And then how do we set the right education and policies and measures in alignment with that? That is using AI intentionally in integration with the person and with the organization. And what we're trying to solve for is what's at the root of what each person, each team needs to be at their best. How well are they meeting those needs today? And what are some intentional things in partnering with AI that they can do to make a change, to lessen those gaps, to shift their focus as an individual or as a leader, to help bring out the best from themselves and others? And how can they set intentional goals and progress points with AI there as a partner for them along the way? So
Yeah,
that's what we're about.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. One of the things that differentiate us in our thinking, I think, is that we anticipate that the people we're serving are going to change.
Mm,
And so, there's a lot of these things like um, I had a lot of fun once. My mother-in-law, when I was first dating my wife, she every time we were together, she would sit me down with Heidi, and we would do some sort of psychology thing. And so she did this thing where like, what are your colors? And so it's this little survey, blah blah blah. And as I'm going down, I noticed the pattern that like A was always like a type 1 personality, and C was always like a gentle, kind of loving personality, blah, blah, blah. And so she had us take it. She said, mark this for yourself and mark this way for the other person. Let's see if you agree with each other. And so I went through and I just marked everything as the color white. And there was this other color, yellow, which was fun and playful and stuff. And so we get the whole thing done and we tally it all up. And I said, oh, it says I'm a white. What's that? And they're like, you are not a white. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. If you say so. And they're like, no, you're just saying that because a white is a peacemaker and a white would agree with us. It's like, look, I don't want to cause any trouble. I mean, if you say I'm a yellow, a fun-loving person, then sure, great, yeah, I'm a yellow. And like, no, you're only saying anyway. So it was a lot of fun because I'm totally a yellow. But and then they later my wife went and found my form and she added up the things I said about her, and I had her as the most aggressive, career-oriented person you've ever seen, and she was really upset. But my mother-in-law's intention was, first of all, to get rid of me if I was a sociopath, but secondly, she had in her head that I was going to be this person for the rest of my life, right? And a lot of that's true. I am fun, but the reality is that we're different people even during different times of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And who we're talking to has an influence on who we are, and in a moment our goals and the things that are valuable to us can change. And it doesn't have to be the birth of a child or being diagnosed with cancer. Like, obviously those are big changes, but it can be other things. It could be like you find out your child is struggling at school, and that could completely change how you're going to approach work. So we really embrace that. And providing that sort of flexibility would be hard with an AI that wasn't designed to be open to those things, right? And an assessment that you could only ever take once.
Yeah.
And so, we've embraced the fact that if we succeed, the people that we're working with are going to be changing. And frankly, even if we're not having an impact, they're going to change anyway. But if we succeed, they're going to be changing and becoming, happier and healthier and more productive in like many ways in their life. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. No, thank you, John, for calling that out. And this has been an enjoyable conversation to really kind of hit on, I think, a lot of interesting topics when it comes to AI. Would love, for those of you who've been watching live or if you're joining after the fact, please follow us on our LinkedIn page at Shiftwall.ai. Feel free to connect with us individually. We love having conversations with people. We post regularly. And we'd love to hear how you're leveraging AI, what your questions, what your concerns are. So even if they didn't get answered during our conversation today, let's keep the dialogue going. Put something in the comment. Feel free to chat with us, and let's keep learning together. So here's to everybody having more of their best days more often. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.